For you say, I am rich, I have prospered, I need nothing. Do you not realize that you are wretched and pitiable and poor and blind and naked? Therefore, I counsel you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich, and white robes to clothe you, to keep the shame of your nakedness from being seen, and eye salve to anoint your eyes that you might see. The three things: lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Eve struggled with them. Jesus was tempted with them. We must deal with them. The lust of the flesh. And let me say, brethren, as we get started, all desires of the flesh are not inherently evil. Let's understand that. That's not the way we're built. Now, obviously, things have to be filtered, and we'll get into that, but understand, every earthly desire is not an evil one, not by any stretch of the imagination. We look at the lust or the desire of the flesh, and we go back to the temptations. It says, and the devil said to him, if you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread. Now, in Eve's case, in Genesis 3:6, it said, and when the woman saw the tree, that it was good for food. The desire of the flesh for Eve here. She saw something very justifiable. It was good food. And it was, after all, in their garden, the garden that had been given to them to tend by God Himself. Why not eat? Maybe the consequence wouldn't be so bad. Besides, it would only be one piece of fruit. And just one bite. And it would be a small bite. Just a taste. What was Jesus' reaction to the same temptation? Come and see. And Jesus answered him and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone. And Matthew 4:4 adds to the Luke account, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Now see, Jesus' reaction is interesting. He saw something very justifiable. Food. Bread. Brethren, he was hungry. And after all, he did have the power of miracles given to him by God. Why not eat? It would only be one loaf of bread. It's not like he was going to make a habit of creating food, but this was a dire situation. He's hungry. There's nothing. Why not? Jesus said no. What Jesus did is he quoted a scripture of deliverance. And this is where we begin the theme of understanding what our lives ought to look like. Because Jesus went back to Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 2 and 3, it says, remember the long way the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness. It's interesting that Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days, and they were in the wilderness for 40 years. In order to humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep His commandments. He humbled you by letting you hunger, then by feeding you with manna, with which neither you nor your ancestors were acquainted, in order to make you understand that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. You see how Jesus answered the temptation. It was not only a scripture of deliverance, but it was a scripture of particular deliverance because it was the picture of the deliverance of mankind from sin and death. And in that deliverance, Jesus saw the value of what his forefathers, human forefathers, had been given. In our combating our desires of the flesh, are we humbled by God, letting us hunger? Now again, every desire of the flesh is not inherently evil. Sacrifice says all things that we are to do with our Christian life must be filtered through sacrifice for it to be acceptable. So if there's a human desire that is a perfectly acceptable human desire, but it doesn't fit through that filter, then it doesn't belong. In this case, Are we willing to let ourselves be hungry? The desires of the flesh. So that we can be fed with manna, heavenly food. In order to make us understand that man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. In Revelation 2 verse 17 it says, "For he that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him that overcomes, to him will I give of the hidden manna. I will give him a white stone, and upon that stone a new name written, which no one knows but he that receives it." Our sacrifice is to take those desires of our flesh and put them in order. See, that's what Jesus did. Would he have been justified in feeding himself? Physically, sure. Spiritually, no. So what's the choice? The answer must be no. Back to Revelation 3:17. "For you say, I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing." Notice there's three things there. You do not realize that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. You think about this, brother, and he's talking to the Laodicean stage of the church. It's not pretty. The remedy for thinking one is rich is in Revelation 3:18. "I counsel of you to buy of me gold, refined by fire, so that you may be rich." You think you're rich, but you could not be anywhere near what you think because you're looking through the wrong eyes. You're looking through the wrong filter. You're looking at life the wrong way, and what you're receiving is a pitiable existence. That's what Jesus is telling the seventh stage of the church. Our sacrifice says, if we don't filter our fleshly desires through that filter of sacrifice, to quote, "Wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked." The lust or the desire of the eyes. In Luke 4:5-7, back to the account of Satan tempting Jesus, "And he led him up and showed him," this is the desire of the eyes, "he showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment in time. And the devil said to him, To thee I will give all this authority and the glory of them, for it has been delivered to me, and to whomsoever I will give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, it will all be thine." In the garden, back to Genesis 3:6, Eve looked at the fruit and says, and she saw that it was a delight to the eyes. What she saw was attractive. What Eve saw was real and desirable to look upon. The fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Most importantly, what she saw was within her grasp.